Okay, good. I need to grab a pen. I'll do that in a minute. No. Ta-da! Okay, here we go. All right, shalom, everyone. All right, welcome to the Tuesday night Torah Study. We haven't had one of these in a couple weeks, so it's good to be back. I know the last one we did was at Sukkot, and so we should be right on schedule here with Torah portion Noach. And so let's go ahead and get right back into the swing of things. For those of you that are new and are watching on live stream, the way this is going to work is we're going to go ahead and read this week's Torah portion, which is Torah portion Noach, which takes us from Genesis 6:9 through, I believe, the end of chapter 11. Okay? Let me just make sure where that is there. Yes. Okay, through 11:32. So we'll go through most of chapter 6, all of 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. We got 11 readings, and so what we're going to do is have a couple of quick announcements. After the announcements, we'll go ahead and read the portion. After we read the portion, we might repeat the announcements real quickly, and then we'll go ahead and discuss the week's Torah portion. An encouragement that, if you're here locally, turn your phones off, put them on silent, and you may want to have something to take notes with so that if you have something that comes across as you're reading it that you may want to ask a question about or make a comment on, that you can have that in front of you as well. All right, so let's go ahead and begin with, actually I usually begin with prayer time. So if there's any urgent prayer needs, you can go ahead and grab that mic, Steve. We'll go ahead and take care of that. Yeah, okay. Okay. Tricia?
Thank you, Rabbi. I want to just start off with giving praise to Abba for the restored relationships with my father and my stepmother, and I just appreciate your counsel in regarding that. I connected with him in the last week, and it was just as if no time had passed.
Fantastic.
And so everything went well with that. With everything that has been going forward with our council, I have researched an aviation school. And I'm asking for prayer in regards to grants and scholarships. It looks like I can start whenever I would want to go forward for my pilot's license. So just want prayer regarding that. I can start immediately as soon as the funding is available. So would just really like a hand in prayer. Thank you.
Oh, okay, wonderful. You can ask Stephen for some lessons. He's flown once. Scared the life out of his sister. We were on a small private plane, just a 4-seater thing, and the pilot had Stephen in the front, and I had my daughter in the back, and he said, "Stephen, you want to fly?" And he said, "Sure." So he's, of course, it's 2 steering wheels and whatever. Well, his sister didn't understand for a second how he could possibly know anything about flying, and she freaked out, so, which you can't blame her. She was probably like 6 or something at the time, so. But anyway. And, as siblings are. And, of course, he was only 7 or 8. So, anyway. Anybody else? And I will talk about the whole crystal thing when it gets to be my turn.
Okay. Wanted to ask for prayer for my dad. So he had some doctor's appointments yesterday and today. He does have a swollen lymph node near his kidney area, and they think that it's probably most likely cancerous. So they're planning to do a biopsy and then probably do some focused radiation. And they've advised him for right now that they probably shouldn't consider moving until maybe like January or after. So they're kind of disappointed because I know my mom wanted to get here right away, and they're planning on it. But so just to keep them in prayer for shalom, that my dad can build up his strength, and I keep reassuring them it's not a matter if, it's just when.
Yep.
So, and then I also wanted to ask prayer for Shaquez because she's going home tomorrow, and I just wanted to ask for travel mercies for her.
Amen. It's always fun to watch people go from, I'm in no rush, to, man, I wish we were going to be able to be there already. It happens so often, and it's always, fun to watch. All right, Rick.
Yeah, a couple praises. Learning my way around with Uber and Lyft, the Chattanooga area, and get my feel for the lay of the land and where I'm supposed to be and where I'm not supposed to be to get the most rides. That'll be a challenge for a bit. Also, praise, looks like we are going to have medical insurance. Within the next couple days, we should have a number we can use. And prayer request for Kevin and his wife. She actually went to the emergency room, I guess, last night. She's a lot of anxiety dealing with what he's going through. He's back in Hershey Medical Center, and it's not looking good. So if we can keep that family in prayer. And also, Caleb Baird, I read about. I can't imagine a post-hole driver getting hit in the head with something like that. But I don't know. I guess he's didn't need any stitches, didn't break anything, but I can't imagine that feeling good. So if we can keep them in prayer as well.
Yeah, they just stapled them back together, so. All right, yeah, he tried to crack the coconut, but he's got a tough coconut. All right, Michael, go ahead.
Right before Sukkot, we had the Yetters come, and I just wanted to give them a warm welcome because I know with Sukkot and everything, didn't get quite the attention that maybe you guys deserve. So, welcome.
Yes. All right, anybody else?
I have one. I
right,
said I
Steve?
was going to say hi to somebody, so I said hi. And then I want prayer for Evan. He's now conversing with some of his peers about wishing to be here. So I don't know. He's not doing well in school, so maybe soon. I don't know. We'll see. So don't let that fall off to the wayside.
Okay. Bring it around to Rabbi Tom.
Thank you. I have a short praise report, a very short testimony, if I may, please. Mm-hmm. My grandson, Daniel, is coming in with my great-granddaughter, and I've never seen any of the great-grandchildren, so she'll be the first one of 6 that I'll be able to see. But originally, his plane was supposed to go to Nashville and arrive at 7:30 p.m. on Friday. And I said, no, we can't pick you up then. It's the Shabbat, and we're not, Joanne's not driving to Nashville and then back and on the Shabbat.
Right.
And so I prayed about it, and I just wrote it off. I said, well, Yahweh, maybe it's your will that, I don't get the trip just doesn't come off, and I don't get to see her at this time. I just turned it over to Yahweh. And so this morning, he sent me a Facebook message that he got a flight into Knoxville for a third of the price that he was going to pay to go to Nashville. So the trip is on. I'm very happy about that.
Amen.
And he's going to get in Knoxville in the afternoon, about 2:30.
Perfect.
On Friday, yeah. So,
Perfect.
But I would also like to ask everyone to please pray for these poor victims of the two major fires in California. It just, last I heard, 300,000 people had to be evacuated from their homes.
Yeah.
Hundreds of homes, maybe 1,000 or more, were destroyed.
Yeah.
Horrible.
It is. And I remember I was watching the news today, and it said that the fire in the further south, I know that I only saw the one statistic is only about 5% contained. So, I mean, they're really just not getting anywhere containing these fires. So, you can't really stop a fire containing 5% of it, And so you really can't contain it if you're controlling even 50 or 60% of it. You really got to get a full hold on it. And so saying that after all this time they've only got 5% on it, that's really saying that this thing is still giving them a lot of problems. And the winds are supposed to kick up again tonight, and really, all it takes is a spark from the wind to start another one. And so, yes, very, very challenging out there. Okay, Shira?
Shalom. I just submitted my reapplication for Medicaid today. I'm really glad to have gotten through all that. So I'm praying that it will come through, and I just need help emotionally right now. So.
Okay. We'll probably talk a little bit about that here. Okay, anybody else? Okay, go ahead and bring it to the live stream.
Okay. Jeannie, prayers for all recovering from illnesses. Seems to be a lot of that going around. Also, of course, prayers for Crystal and her family. April, praise report. My mom got in a good nursing home for rehab from hip surgery. Regina Hoffman, praises for Rabbi's advice. Prayers that all goes well in my new endeavor. Jordan Thompson, please pray for 2-year-old Julia Largent and her family. Julia's brainstem cancer has come back after a year fight and likely has minimal time left. Claire, prayer request for my mother-in-law, please. Awaiting biopsy results for our carcinoma on her face. Olivier and Janet Hoffman, kindly lift up Crystal's family. Peace and comfort. Owen and Evie Zamora, please pray for Evie. She's got a cough that has been relentless. Olivier and Janet Hoffman, also kindly pray for discernment and understanding in our family. Thank you. Evangeline, prayer for Hannah and her family situation. Praise Yah for a good family's bonding weekend last Monday, and direction for finding my way to work during the 405 freeway fire. Aaron Sullivan, a dear old friend and coworker, was admitted to hospice care yesterday. He has been battling cancer for several years and has finally come to an end. Requesting prayer for him and for his family. Tony, prayers for a favorable outcome tomorrow at my cardiologist appointment, along with some unspoken prayers. Carl Davis, prays that Abba will pour out our spirit and hopefully, to all mankind, so that that shalom may be disturbed. April Holcutt, also prayers for health issues. And pretty much a bunch of unspoken prayers online as well. That's it for now.
All right, how many you got on there?
223.
Wow, okay, good. All right, so let me go ahead and add a few myself as we go ahead and get the prayer time worked out. For myself, I'm still somewhat under the weather here, so I'm not fully recovered. I'm doing a little better. The cough has not really manifested as it has in the past to, continuous, but it's still there. And I'm probably going to cough here in a second now that I mentioned it, just because I'm just going to trigger it. And but I am feeling a little better. I was feeling really not very great on Sunday, so it's gotten a little better in the last 2 days. And it's mostly due to weather change, allergies, or whatever. That's kind of what's going on here. This is normal. I get this every spring, every fall. Couple of other things real quickly. There's that property that we were talking about. We're still looking at doing some things with. Please keep that in prayer. We did go out and look at it with our architect and engineer yesterday, and it looks like it's something we may be interested in trying to put an offer on and to see what we go on with that. So let's just keep that in prayer. And we've gone through this many, many times in the past, and we'll have to just see how it goes moving forward here. It's a big project. It's the biggest project we've considered doing in the past, compared to all the other ones. But it already has, really impressive existing infrastructure and space. And it's already right here in Cleveland. This is kind of a real advantage. So let's just keep that all in prayer as well. All right, so let me address the biggest issue that we are praying about. We did have someone, Crystal Janice, who you all know, took her own life on Saturday night. And I had an opportunity to talk to her husband. He called me when she first went missing, and then when the police came and the whole thing. And the Hoffmans have been a blessing to be able to, since they live near there, to help Joe and dealing with the challenge with that. But that all in itself would be a hard enough thing to deal with. But it's also triggered for a lot of people, especially in the ladies' Marco Polo, triggered a lot of insecurities, a lot of fears, a lot of the normal stuff that happens when something like this happens. And by normal, I mean anytime there's some sort of what we would consider preventable loss, because we think it should be preventable. So then we end up thinking and beating ourselves up on, well, what could I have done? And the answer is probably nothing. You think it's preventable. And that's where you really start to beat yourself up, and then we start thinking, well, what do we need to do to make sure this doesn't happen again? Well, there's not necessarily a common thread every time something like this might happen. Different reasons or different motivators for different people. The one motivator that's the same almost always is they had enough, okay? And so there's a giving up type of thing. So what we all can do is be encouraged to find something that gives us purpose, something that keeps us motivated and desiring to be around, something that gives us hope. And I'm not saying she didn't have any of those things. I think, for my personal thing, I think she just had some really bad health news that she just had for a long enough time that she just decided she couldn't. And I don't know. I mean, she didn't say, okay? But I want all of you to not own the guilt part. We all go through that. Anything that was not like a cancer or an illness or whatever, like something that, you think, well, what could I have done? Nothing, okay? If somebody gets to that place, they're going to do whatever they're going to do. They have to do something. They have to seek the help. They have to share with somebody. So don't own that part. Pray for the family. Pray for her. When I say pray for her, I mean just to seek Abba's compassion, but also realize that some of the things we've heard over the centuries is man-made fear-mongering about the worst thing you can do is take your own life, and that's the unpardonable blood. That's just nonsense, okay? There's no scripture that says that. She gave into a weak moment of just not being able to deal with stuff anymore. We all can get to those places where we just can't deal with stuff anymore. And there's nothing shameful in that. Just praise Abba, you haven't gotten there. Because every one of us could have those moments at some point where we just feel like, I can't do this. It's just too hard. And so that's not the unpardonable sin. It's not sin at all, as far as I can tell. I mean, she just couldn't do it and didn't know what else to do. So I'm not saying I know what happens and where that goes, but don't jump in the Father's chair and try to judge for yourself. And don't try to come up with ways to comfort people by assuring them that, well, God's going to do this and God's going to do that. We don't know what he's going to do. I just let you know that he knows her capacity. He knows where she was at. And he understands how hard it was being her and dealing with her stuff. Just like he understands how hard it is being you and dealing with your stuff. Because I may think your stuff is no problem. You may think my stuff is no problem. But you and your own stuff, that's a problem. And so we have to all deal with our own stuff. But I do want to encourage us to go through the grieving process. And it is a process, and you have to go through it. It's an emotional roller coaster. It's not fun. It's in a what it coulda, shouldas, what could I have done, guilt, all of the, how it could have been prevented, all of the getting angry at various people that maybe could have done something, being angry at God, being angry. I mean, these are all normal emotional reactions, okay? But I do want us to be encouraged that, we should recognize that while it is important that we study the Torah portion, it's important that we understand and learn how to walk. It's important that we understand the stories and the accounts that happen from the beginning of time all the way through them ready to cross the Jordan in Deuteronomy, from Genesis to Deuteronomy. The bigger problem is going on inside of you. And we're going to try to teach a lot more about that and work on that stuff as we can, because that's the challenge. And it's the same challenge that we always deal with, the challenge of fear and doubt versus trust and belief. Because when you're suffering, how do you trust that the suffering will end in a good way? How do you trust him through the suffering? How do you go through the process? How do you make that work? Sorry, I needed to get someone a tissue. Okay? It's not easy to go through these things because all of us suffer from, at times, strong emotional negative places. Lack of self-worth, insecurity, rejection, things that you just hurt so much emotionally you just want to get away from it. And we escape in different ways. You know, most of us don't go to that extreme, but we do other extremes. We go into drugs or we go into, some other addictive behavior as an escape because we just don't want to deal with reality. Reality's tough. I jokingly have said to you in the past, life sucks. And apparently, I said life's hard, and apparently I suck at it. Okay? Life is hard. That's why we try to avoid it. We don't want to deal with reality. A lot of you struggle with your health. A lot of you struggle with your relationships. A lot of you struggle with your finances. A lot of you struggle with your role. You feel like I'm a terrible mother, I'm a terrible father, I'm a terrible wife, I'm a terrible husband, I'm a terrible friend, whatever. You just feel like you're just terrible at everything. Or a failure. And that hurts so much emotionally that pain is something that you want to numb or escape in some way. Don't run from it. Embrace the opportunity. Don't embrace it, but embrace the opportunity to learn from, grow, and overcome. Listen to the overcoming teaching over and over. It's to he who overcomes receives all the rewards. Listen to the endurance teaching. You need to endure, which means endurance, when you hear it from the point of view of endurance, it sounds like you just have to be able to keep doing something for a while and you have a lot of stamina. But when you think about endure as opposed to endurance, it sounds like you have to deal with and handle something that's hard to deal with. Well, guess what? Life is really hard to deal with. So sometimes people choose to escape from life because life is so hard to deal with. And Abba in his mercy and his compassion has a plan for all that. Okay, but we don't know what to do because we're still here. Just like we don't know what to do when a young person dies all of a sudden in an accident or from a health thing or something that we don't expect. Because as older adults, we expect to have them outlive us, not the other way around. Okay? And I've seen a man destroyed. Absolutely destroyed because he had so much health issues. He and his wife were absolutely content that he was going to die first. And then she got a sudden, serious cancer that killed her quickly. And he was still just hanging in there. He wasn't healthy, but he was still hanging in there. And it destroyed him because he was okay and she was okay with the understanding that he was going to go first. And when that didn't happen, he rejected Yahweh. He rejected everything because he just could not process emotionally. Now, I know we're supposed to get to Genesis, and you know what? This is a Torah portion everybody knows real well. We're going to deal with the flood. We're going to deal with Noah and work our way towards Abraham, and that's great. But understand, as we're going through this, though, we really should be looking emotionally at what's going on because that's the fight. That's the hard thing. It's not, as I've said it often, it's not hard to keep Saturday instead of Sunday. It's not hard to stop eating pork and shellfish and shrimp and stuff. It's not hard really to give up Christmas and Easter and keep the feast. These things aren't hard to do. But living in this world, dealing with our emotional challenges and our weaknesses in our flesh, this is the hard stuff. I think that's even more what Paul talks about when he says we don't fight against flesh and blood. We're not doing a physical battle against a physical person. We're dealing with the internal battle. Now, we like to use the metaphors of it's some sort of demon thing going on inside of you. No, it's just us. For the most part, it's all of that junk that's inside that has to be won over. And Abba needs you to win that fight, either now or in the millennium, where you can show him that you have faith, trust, and belief, so that he can give you eternal life in an emotionally stable place, in an emotionally healthy place. And I think everybody has to walk out that journey to get to that place before we can do anything else. And I think that's what the life journey is about. That's the wilderness journey is about. Because if we read about the rebellion that we've read that, it talks about with Hasatan and whatever happened with that, wasn't that an emotionally generated rebellion? Pride, vanity, ego, lusting after something else, usurping. It's all an emotionally generated thing. We've got to get to the place where we are emotionally stable, that we have strength and courage in the face of this terribly hard place to be. Because I don't care how successful you might be in some ways in your life, you're going to face challenges that show you this is a tough place to be. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care how much you have children or wife or husband or whatever looks like success. I don't care how talented you are at music or art or sports or whatever. You're going to be challenged. And that's why we see a lot of people that look like they're so successful, and then we hear that they also may decide to take their own lives. You say, how could that be? They were so successful. Or they'll implode and overdose on drugs or some other thing, because success is not outward, it's inward. Finding that internal peace is what it's all about. The journey's inside. The outward trappings are nonsense. They're not relevant. And so we have to then be encouraged that Abba puts you on a path to go through all of these experiences to help us grow strong enough to handle what's coming, to grow strong enough to be in that forever kingdom in a right mind, in a right attitude, with a right emotional state. That's not to say you can't get emotional. That just has to be in control, where it doesn't control you, but you control it. You regulate the level of it so that you're not out of balance. Because you could be out of balance in joy just as much as you can in anger or fear or whatever it is. You can be over the top. We call, so in a real diagnosis, and you have the manic and you have the depressed. I mean, those are extremes of over-the-top joy with extremes of over-the-top, negative, just down in the depths. But we should be able to have all things in balance. Abundant joy, abundant confidence, and the ability to lift yourself up from going into depths of negative emotions. And that's part of the community. As a community, we can lift each other up and help each other through this. But here's what I want to encourage all of you. Don't think about what you could have done for Crystal. Think about what you need to do for you. If you need help, if you need to make that phone call, if you need to reach out to find out that you're not by yourself. The only person that could have helped her at any point was her, okay? But she had to believe that there was help. So I'm not blaming her for anything, but you need to be at peace with that reality, that you are not to blame for anything. I'm not blaming her either. I'm just saying is that if you want to do anything, recognize when you get to any moments, and sometimes people do have those suicidal moments, and it's hard to talk about those things and deal with them. But then what do you do? Do you have somebody to call? Is there somebody that could just show up as soon as you need them and just sit with you and encourage you and tell you it's okay? These thoughts are normal and you can get through it and we can overcome it and get to the place where you don't have them anymore. Because all the thoughts is, I can't take it anymore. And if you don't see any options of what to do, what options do you have when you just can't take it anymore? That's what we can do when we pour love into the community, is be able to show people when you can't take it anymore, come to us. We'll give you whatever it is you need emotionally and strength so that you can get through, so you can overcome. Okay? So your being available is what you can do. But also, for all of you that are listening, if you're going through this, you need to be the one that reaches out to somebody and not have that fear of rejection. But you know what? Some of them out there sadly have reached out and gotten rejected. Reached out and been laughed at. Reached out and been mocked. Reached out and whatever negative response. Or they're embarrassed because it shows weakness. But that's what it is. It is weakness. But not weakness in an embarrassing way. It's a reality. You have a weakness. And either you can give into that weakness or you could seek help with it. Get the pride and the ego and other parts out of the way and say, I'm in trouble. I need help. So many people out there in the body are suffering because they're in trouble and need help. I'm not even talking about necessarily just taking it to the extreme of suicide, but just in whatever area of their life, and they're just unwilling to say, I need help. I don't know what to do. Or I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Seek that help. Don't be embarrassed. It's okay. As a matter of fact, there's true strength in standing up and saying, I don't know what to do. I'm lost. I'm at the end of my rope. There's no shame in that. As a matter of fact, that's true strength to admit when you come to that place. Because that's the place that you can really learn something and come out of and grow. And then you'll be able to help somebody else go through it when they go through it. Once you figure out the journey and find the way to the so-called light at the end of the tunnel, and you see the end of the thing, and you say, wow, I went through this journey, and I'm in a good place now, and I think I remember how I did that, and who helped me, and how they helped me, and I can help other people the same way. Okay? So anyway, let this be a seed that she planted and a blessing to all that we can learn from to help all of us to work with each other in a more loving and encouraging way, and also to encourage those of us that need help to get the help. Manny? Okay, so he said, what do you say to someone who says they're afraid to call because they're afraid they're going to be told just to get over it? You need to know, how do I want to say this? You need to make that call because you need to know if the ministry you're working with is the ministry that's going to say that to you or the ministry that's going to help you. Okay? You need to know that answer. Don't be afraid of that answer. If you get that answer, don't own the answer, just reject the ministry. Okay? I mean, if you're in that dire a strait, and the ministry's just going to say, well, you just need to get over it in a sort of a flippant, callous way, well, that's not the right place for you to be being ministered to. Okay? Now, granted, there may be things in your life you just need to get over. But I'm not talking about that level of stuff here. Okay, we're talking about, there are some things that we all know in our life that we just need to let go of and we're just holding on to for no reason. This is much more, we're talking the extreme stuff. But don't be afraid to ask that question. That question will get you important information. So it's a good question. Here's the problem. We are way too susceptible to listening to whatever comes our way from anybody and just owning it in some ways if somehow they should speak into our lives. And those who should speak into our lives, we don't give enough weight to at all. We listen to all the wrong people. Let whatever you hear simply be information. And then you could decide what to do with it afterwards. So when you're in that situation and you're afraid, well, you need to know what the reaction would be. See, a lot of you don't call me because you're afraid of what I'm going to say. No, you need to know what I'm going to say. Because then you'll know our right relationship. You won't know till you try. But you got to try it first. And some of you have tried it and you've seen the fruit of it, and others are still afraid of it. Or you think, well, yeah, it worked for her or worked for him, but what about me? Well, you're not going to know till you try. And I might be strong with you about some things, but we're talking about here an extreme, I really am at my end of my rope. I don't know what to do. I'm ready to quit life. You just need to get over it is not the answer you need to hear at that moment. What you need to hear is, we are here for you, and you can get through. You can make it, and we can help you make it. And there is a path out of this, a journey that will take you out of this place while still in this place, so to speak. So you need to know the answer to that. Good question, Manny, but that's a good question. Stop being so afraid of what people are going to say. You need to know. Otherwise, you don't know the level of the relationship you have with them, do you? So don't take it as another rejection or another this or another that, if that's what's been your experience. Say, I'm really glad I now know how that person really feels about me and the level of our relationship. That's information. Otherwise, you're in a relationship that's phony. You don't, or just a mystery. You don't know. You got to give the person a chance to show. You may be surprised in a good way, and you may actually find the answers you need and the support you need to get out from that terrible, dark place you're in. But you're not going to know till you try. Anyway, hopefully that helps a few of you, maybe a whole bunch of you. But this is really what it's all about. I mean, look, we're about to do a Rosh Chodesh service. Really apropos, I think, in a lot of ways, because Rosh Chodesh is a new month. It's the turning of a cycle. It's turning the page to a new hope and optimism for the next, moon cycle. What more appropriate time for us to be talking about something like this and creating an optimistic point of view towards whatever I'm going through now. Today is the first day of the rest of my life type of thing. You've heard that over the years. It used to be in the commercials and stuff, right? But that's true. This moment could be a turning point for you. All it takes, if you listen to all of the greatest motivational speakers, Manny and I have listened to most of them. But if you've listened to them, you'll know that one thing is for sure in common. They will all tell you it just takes one distinction, one clarification to redirect your whole life. That one thought, that one clarity. And so when I listen to teachers, when I read books, I don't care if the whole book is whatever, useless. I'm looking for just one little nugget, one idea. And if I can get just one, if I get 2 or 3, I've gotten a jackpot. But if I can spend $5 or $6 or $8 on a book or a tape or watch a video or something, and I can get one idea that will change and turn my life a little bit in a direction more where it needs to go, and that's why you should also be listening to the Torah teachings. You should be listening to what I teach, the people like me, to help you have that one little more of a thought of how to become more Yeshua-like. And so I'm hoping that, some of the things I just said, that it may give anybody out there just that one little thing that says, I can latch on to that. That can give me hope. Okay, that can really work. All right. Let's go ahead and pray. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. Father, we come before you, and you've heard everybody's prayers here, the ones that were spoken as well as unspoken. And Father, we come to you at a very challenging moment because we've lost somebody we care about very much. And we know that her journey ended because of the challenge of life itself. And that doesn't just sadden us, but it also shakes a lot of us to our core because we wonder about ourselves. What if I have a weak moment? What if I can't make it? And so, Father, I ask that you would strengthen everyone who's listening at this moment and all that are connected in any way to the events here, that they would be strengthened to know that you called them knowing they could make it. That you called them knowing that there would be a way of escape, provided that escape is through your process, through your community, through your structure, not through an exit. And this isn't to pick on the decision that was made. She made the decision that she made based on where she was at that moment, and we do not fault that at all. But to encourage all those that are here now hearing this message, that they might make a different choice. That they might give you an opportunity to work through your body to help them find a different method of escape. An escape that would lead them to grow and transform more into a Yeshua-like person. To grow in their belief, their strength, their emunah, their faith, their trust, and bury and overcome all that fear. We are so overflowing with fear. Worries, concerns, insecurities, just overrun with fear. So, Father, we ask that you would help us to have that sound mind, that you say that we were not given a spirit of fear, but that of a sound mind. Give us that sound mind. Help us overcome the fear through the Ruach HaKodesh and through our walk and through our journey, through the structure that you give us of community and family, a mishpacha, family. So that, Father, that we can overcome anything, that we can understand verses that say things like we can do all things through Messiah that strengthens us. And so, Father, we thank you in your mercy for structure and for a body and for your word and for a community. Because truly, I have no idea how anybody could journey this out by themselves. But sadly, there are still those in the body that feel like they're journeying by themselves. And Father, we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to assure them that they are not alone. They are not by themselves. So, Father, help us, inspire us, and guide us as we try to be an extension of you to each other, as we lift each other up and strengthen and encourage each other, to walk with hope, with a strong belief in the hope that comes through you. So, Father, we thank you. We praise you. We give you all glory and all honor in Yeshua's mighty name. Amen. 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 Okay. So with that hope and with that optimism, as we are dealing with these things, let's go ahead and have our Rosh Chodesh service. You can all rise for this. It's only a few minutes long. And we'll begin with the sounding of the silver trumpet. This is for the Rosh Chodesh for the month of Cheshvan, which starts tonight, and tomorrow is Cheshvan 1. Amen. Amen. All right, Psalm 51, verse 15. Yahweh sifatai tiftach, ufi yagid tehilatecha. Yahweh, open my lips, that my mouth declare your praise. Together, we'll read most of the slides so you can all join in with me. Together. May the expressions of my mouth and the thoughts of my heart find favor before you, Yahweh, my rock and my redeemer. Numbers chapter 10 and verse 10. Also in the day of your gladness and in your appointed times and in the beginnings of your months, you shall blow with the trumpets over your burnt offerings and over the sacrifices of your peace offerings, that they may be to you for a memorial before your Elohim. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Kedushat Levanah, the sanctification of the new moon. O Yahweh, our Elohim, and Elohim of our fathers, make this coming month one of good and blessing. Grant us long life, a life of peace, of good, of blessing, of sustenance, of vigor. A life marked by a reverence for you and a dread of sin. A life free from shame and reproach. A life of prosperity and honor. A life in which love of the living Torah and the fear of Elohim animates us. A life in which our heartfelt desires are fulfilled for good. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, Amen. He who performed miracles for our fathers and liberated them from slavery to freedom, may he quickly liberate us and gather our exiles from the four corners of the earth, and let us say, Amen. The new moon of the month of Cheshvan is today. May it prove to be good and fruitful for all 12 tribes of Yisrael. May the set-apart one, blessed be he, grant this Rosh Chodesh to us and to all his people, for life and peace, for gladness and joy, for deliverance and consolation, and let us say, Amen. Together. Blessed, praised, glorified, honored, and exalted be the name of the King of Kings, the set-apart one. Blessed be he, who is the first and the last, and beside him there is no Elohim. Extol him in the heavens. Yahweh is his name. Rejoice before his face. His name is honored beyond all blessing and praise. Blessed be his name, whose glorious kingdom is forever. Let the name of Yahweh be blessed forever and ever. Isaiah 66, verses 22 and 23. For as the new heavens and the new earth that I make stand before me, declares Yahweh, so your seed and your name shall stand. And it shall be that from Rosh Chodesh to Rosh Chodesh, and from Shabbat to Shabbat, all flesh shall come to worship before me, declares Yahweh. Amen. Rosh Chodesh Sameach. Amen. All right, so tonight's Torah portion is Noach. We're going to need 11 readers if you want to come on and sit up here. I don't know why I closed that. Open it back up here. Okay, so I guess we have 5 chairs. We'll fill them twice, and I've got Rabbi Tom for the 11th, so we've got enough for all of this. I'm going to put the silver trumpet away here. Okay, Rabbi Tom, you want to be first? Sure, why don't you come up, we'll just have you be first. I got it. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rabbi Tom, who's come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Rabbi Tom, you're going to take us from chapter 6 and verse 9 and take us to the end of the, well, let's see, do I have it all the way to the end of the chapter? Yeah, it's verse 22, okay?
This is the genealogy of Noach. Noach was a righteous man, perfect in his generations. Noach walked with Elohim. And Noach brought forth 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And the earth was corrupt before Elohim, and the earth was filled with violence. And Elohim looked upon the earth and saw that it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And Elohim said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And see, I am going to destroy them from the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and outside with a covering. And this is how you are to make it. The length of the ark is 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. Make a window for the ark and complete it to a cubit from above. And set the door of the ark in its side, and make it with lower, second, third, and third decks. And see, I myself am bringing floodwaters on the earth to destroy all flesh, in which is the breath of life from under the heavens. And all that is on the earth is to die. And I shall establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. And of all the living of all flesh, 2 of each you are to bring into the ark, to keep them alive with you, a male and a female. Of the birds after their kind, and of the cattle after their kind, and of all the creeping creatures on the ground after their kind, 2 of each are to come to you to keep them alive. As for you, take of all food that is eaten and gather it to yourself, and it shall be food for you and for them. And Noach did according to all that Elohim commanded him, so he did.
Amen. Okay, thank you, Rabbi Tom. Okay, next up we have Steve. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Steve, who's come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us now to chapter 7 and read verses 1 through 12.
And Yahweh said to Noah, come into the ark, and you and your household, because I have seen that you are righteous before me and this generation. All the clean beasts, take with you 7 pair, a male and his female, and of the beasts that are unclean, 2, a male, his female, and the birds of the heavens, 7 pairs, male and female, to keep offspring alive on the face of the earth. For after 7 more days I shall send rain on the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and shall wipe from the face of the earth all that stands that I created. And Noah did according to all that Yahweh commanded him. Now Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters were on the earth, and Noah and his sons and his wives and his sons' wives went into the ark because of the water of the flood. And on the clean beasts, of the clean beasts and of the beasts that are unclean, and of the birds and of all that creeps on the earth, 2 by 2 went into the ark to Noah, male and female, as Elohim commanded Noah. And it came to be after 7 days that the water of the earth were on the earth, that the waters of the flood were on the earth in 600 years of Noah's life, and in the second new moon, 77 days, or the 17th day of the new moon, on that day all the fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of the heavens were opened, and the rain was on the earth 40 days and 40 nights.
Amen. Thank you, Steve. Okay, Shaquez. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Shaquez, who's come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, take us now in chapter 7 from verse 13 to the end of the chapter.
On that same day, Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them, went into the ark, they and every life form after its kind, and every beast after its kind, and every creeping creature that creeps on the earth after its kind, and every bird after its kind, every bird of every sort. And they went into the ark to Noah, 2 by 2, of all flesh, in which is the breath of life. And those going in, male and female of all flesh, went in as Elohim had commanded him, and Yahweh shut him in. And the flood was on the earth 40 days, and the waters increased and lifted up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. And the waters were mighty and greatly increased on the earth, and the ark moved about on the surface of the waters. And the waters were exceedingly mighty on the earth, and all the high mountains under all the heavens were covered. The waters became mighty, 15 cubits upward, and the mountains were covered. And all flesh died, the creeping creature on the earth, birds and cattle and beasts, and every swarming creature that swarms on the earth, and all mankind. All in whose nostrils was the breath of the Spirit of life, and all that was on the dry land died. So he wiped off all that stand, which were on the face of the ground, both man and beast, creeping creature and bird of the heavens. And they were wiped off from the face, and they were wiped off from the earth. And only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark. And the waters were mighty on the earth 150 days.
Thank you, Shequez. All right, Michael. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Michael, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us now to chapter 8 and read verses 1 through 11.
And Elohim remembered Noach and all the beasts and all the cattle that were with him in the ark. And Elohim made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters subsided. And the fountains of the deep and the windows of the heaven were stopped, and the rain from the heavens was withheld. And the waters receded steadily from the earth, and at the end of the 150 days the waters diminished. And in the 7th new moon, the 17th day of the new moon, the ark rested on the mountains of Ararat. And the waters decreased steadily until the 10th new moon. In the 10th new moon, on the first day of the new moon, the tops of the mountains became visible. And it came to be at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. And he sent out a raven, which kept going out and turning back until the waters had dried up from the earth. Then he sent out a dove from him to see if the waters had receded from the face of the ground. But the dove found no resting place for its feet, and returned into the ark to him, for the waters were on the face of all the earth. So he put out his hand and took it, and pulled it into the ark to himself. And he waited yet another 7 days, and again he sent the dove out from the ark. And the dove came to him in the evening, and see, a freshly plucked olive leaf was in its mouth. And Noach knew that the waters had receded from the earth.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Michael. Sarah Beth. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Sarah Beth, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, Sarah Beth's going to take us from verse 12 to the end of chapter 8.
And he waited yet another 7 days and sent out the dove, which did not return to him again. And it came to be in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, that the waters were dried up from the earth. And Noach removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and saw the surface of the ground was dry. And in the 2nd month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth was dry. And Elohim spoke to Noach, saying, Go out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you. Bring out with you every living creature of all flesh that is with you, of birds, of cattle, and all creeping creatures that creep on the earth. And let them teem on the earth, and bear and increase on the earth. So Noach went out, and his sons, and his wife, and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping creature, and every bird, whatever creeps on the earth, according to their kinds, went out of the ark. And Noach built an altar to Yahweh, and took of every clean beast, and of every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And Yahweh smelled a soothing fragrance. And Yahweh said in his heart, Never again shall I curse the ground because of man, although the inclination of his heart, man's heart, is evil from his youth, and never again smite all living creatures as I have done. As long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and winter and summer, and day and night shall not cease.
All right, thank you, Sarah Beth. Next, Rick. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rick, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Rick's going to take us now into chapter 9, and this is a longer reading, 1 through 19.
And Elohim blessed Noach and his sons and said to them, Be fruitful and increase, and fill the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you is on every beast of the earth, and on every bird of the heavens, on all that creeps on the ground, and on all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they have been given. Every creeping creature that lives is food for you. I have given you all, as I gave the green plants. But do not eat flesh with its life, its blood. But only your blood for your lives I require. From the hand of every beast I require it, and from the hand of man. From the hand of every man's brother I require the life of man. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood is shed, for in the image of Elohim he has made him. As for you, be fruitful and increase. Bring forth teemingly in the earth and increase in it. And Elohim spoke to Noach and to his sons with him, saying, And I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you, and with every living being that is with you, of the birds, of the cattle, of every beast of the earth with you, of all that go out of the ark, every beast of the earth. And I shall establish my covenant with you, and never again is all flesh cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again is there a flood to destroy the earth. And Elohim said, This is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you, and every living being that is with you, for all generations to come. I shall set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. And it shall be, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the rainbow shall be seen in the cloud, and I shall remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living being of all flesh, and never again let the waters become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the rainbow shall be in the cloud, and I shall see it, to remember the everlasting covenant between Elohim and every living being of all flesh that is on the earth. And Elohim said to Noach, This is the sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth. And the sons of Noach who went out of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth, and Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noach, and all the earth was overspread from them.
Amen. Amen. Okay. Next up. That was a good trade. All right, next up. Gabe. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Gabe, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us now from verse 20 to the end of the chapter.
Oh, yeah. And Noah, a man of soil, began and planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine and was He drank of the wine and was drunk and became uncovered in his tent. And the Ham of the father of Canaan saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. So Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father. But their faces were turned away, and they did not see their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and he knew what his younger son had done to him. And he had said, "Cursed is Canaan, let him become a servant of servants to his brothers." And he said, "Blessed be Yahweh, the Elohim of Shem, and let Canaan become his servant. Let Elohim enlarge Yefeth, right? And let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan become his servant." And Noah lived after the flood 350 years. So all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died.
Amen. Amen. Okay, thank you, Gabe. The genealogies begin. You tried to time that? Well, you could trade it maybe. I mean, maybe somebody else wants to try the genealogy. It's a tough one. Sherry, you want to do the genealogy? It's pretty long. Well, we're going to do verses 1 through 19. It's going to cover most of it. So I got 2 in a row. So you got half of it. You got it. All right, you got it. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac. And often I just skip through that and say, okay, we can't pronounce them, we'll just skip through it. But no, I think we should try it. In Hebrew. Okay. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Michelle, let's go to Yahweh and the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. And you can speak it in tongues if you want. No, I'm kidding. Well, Hebrew, that's a language. Okay, here we go. Chapter 10, verses 1 through 19. So pretty much that whole.
And this is the genealogy of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And sons were born to them after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Yawan, and Tubal, and Meshech, and Tiras. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Rephath, and Togoma. And the sons of Yawan, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Doganin. From these, the coastlands, peoples of the nations were separated into the lands, everyone according to his language, according to their clans, into their nations. And the sons of Ham, Cush, and Mitzrayim, and Put, and Canaan. And the sons of Cush, Seba, and Hawilah, and Sabta, and Raman, and Sabteka. And the sons of Ramah, Sheba, and Dedan. And Cush brought forth Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before Yahweh, therefore it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before Yahweh. And the beginning of his reign was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. From the land he went to Ashur, and built Nineveh, and Rehoboth, Ir, and Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah, and the great city. And Mitzrayim brought forth Ludim, and Anamim, and Lahabim, and Naphtahim, and Pathrusim, and Kashlahim, from whom came the Philistines, and Kaphatorim. And Canaan brought forth Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite, and the Amorite, and the Gershurite, and the Hivite, and the Archite, and the Sinite, and the Arwadite, and the Tesmarite, and the Hamathite. And afterward, the clans of the Canaanites were spread abroad. And the border of the Canaanites was from Sidon as you go toward Gerar, as far as Azah, as you go toward Sodom and Amorah and Admah and Seboim, as far as Lasha.
Well done. Well done. All right, Shira. Excuse me. All right. Michelle set that bar pretty high. Here we go. He who blessed our brothers, he who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Shira, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. But his set apart one, bless her and her family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, Shira's going to take us now from verse 20 to the end of the chapter.
These were the sons of Ham, according to their clans, according to their languages, in their lands, in their nations. And also to Shem, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Yefet, the elder, children were born. The sons of Shem, Elam, and Ashur, and Arpachshad, and Lud, and Aram. And the sons of Aram, Uz, and Chul, and Geter, and Mash. And Arpachshad brought forth Shelach, and Shelach brought forth Eber. And to Eber were born two sons. The name of the one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided. And his brother's name was Yoktan. And Yoktan brought forth Almodad, and Shelef, and Chatzarmawet, and Yerach, and Hadoram, and Uzal, and Dikla, and Oval, and Abimael, and Sheva, and Ophir, and Chawila, and Yobab. All these were sons of Yoktan. And their dwelling place was from Mesha, as you go towards Sephar, a mountain of the east. These were the sons of Shem, according to their clans, according to their languages, in their lands, according to their nations. These were the clans of the sons of Noach, according to their generations, in their nations. And from these nations were divided on the earth after the flood.
Amen. Amen. I need one more reader after this. Okay, come on up. Okay. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rebbe and Julie, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us now in chapter 11 and read verses 1 through 15.
And all the earth had one language and one speech. And it came to be, as they set out from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said to each other, "Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens, and make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered over all the face of the earth." Then Yahweh came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And Yahweh said, "Look, they are one people, and they all have one language, and this is what they begin to do. And now they are not going to be withheld from doing whatever they plan to do. Come, let us go there and confuse their language, so that they do not understand one another's speech." And Yahweh scattered them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. That is why its name was called Babel, or Babel, because there Yahweh confused the language of all the earth, and from there Yahweh scattered them over the face of all the earth. This is the genealogy of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and brought forth Arpachshad 2 years after the flood. And after he brought forth Arpachshad, Shem lived 500 years and brought forth sons and daughters. And Arpachshad lived 35 years and brought forth Shelah. And after he brought forth Shelah, Arpachshad lived 403 years and brought forth sons and daughters. And Shelah lived 30 years and brought forth Eber. And after he brought forth Eber, Shelah lived 403 years and brought forth sons and daughters. And Eber lived 34 years and brought forth Peleg. And after he brought forth Peleg, Eber lived 430 years and brought forth sons and daughters. And Peleg lived 30 years and brought forth Reu. And after he brought forth Reu, Peleg lived 209 years and brought forth sons and daughters. Where was I supposed to go to? Did I go past it? I stopped at, I'm at 20. I was having a good time.
Having a good time?
Sorry. You- I was having fun with that. Okay. And Reu lived 32 years and brought forth Serug. And after he brought forth Serug, Reu lived 207 years and brought forth sons and daughters. And Serug lived 30 years and brought forth Nahor. And after he brought forth Nahor, Serug lived 200 years and brought forth sons and daughters. And Nahor lived 29 years and brought forth Terah. And after he brought forth Terah, Nahor lived 119 years and brought forth sons and daughters. And Terah lived 70 years and brought forth Avram, Nahor, and Haran. And this is the genealogy of Terah. Terah brought forth Avram, Nahor, and Haran brought forth Lot. And Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his birth in Ur-Kasdim. And Avram and Nahor took wives. The name of Avram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Yiscah. And Sarai was barren; she had no child. And Terah took his son Avram and his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Avram's wife, and they went out with them from Ur-Kasdim to go to the land of Canaan. And they came to Haran and dwelt there. And the days of Terah came to be 205 years, and Terah died in Haran.
Amen. Amen. Okay, thank you. I'm glad you got on a roll there. I think Trish is happy about that too. All right, let's see if I can get this reset real quickly here. Okay, the traditional blessing after the Torah reading. Excuse me. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Yahweh noten haTorah. Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh our Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us a Torah of truth and has planted eternal life in our midst. Blessed are you, Yahweh, giver of the Torah. Amen. Amen. Thank you all, you readers. Excellent job today. Look, as a good husband, who am I to stop my wife when she's on a roll? Anyway, excuse me. All right, so we've got a lot of stuff going on here. We covered quite a little bit of ground. Lots of big things happening. You've got some genealogies, of course, to let us know who everybody is. But you've got the flood. Big events here. I mean, after all, if you were going through the story for the first time, here's the exciting creation of all things, and then there's people and all this great stuff, and all of a sudden there's a murder we deal with right away in the beginning, and now everybody is so corrupt that the Creator wants to just wipe everybody out. That's not an auspicious beginning. Okay? Not an auspicious beginning. And He's given us another time frame to get back to, again, the days of Noah, unfortunately. And so that's where we're going to be at. Okay, so I didn't get to do the announcements I wanted to earlier, so I'm just going to quickly remind everyone. So we do have today's Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, which is exciting. And so that's the beginning of the next month as we journey through to the next event, which will be Hanukkah coming up in December. But also, I want to remind us that, as always, for those of you that are on live stream, we do have our services every Shabbat. We do live stream it at 1:15 Eastern time. Just think about 1 o'clock. The stream starts at about 1, but the service itself doesn't start until about 1:15 Eastern time in the afternoon on Saturday afternoons. Okay, and for those of you that are with the leadership, we are going to have our leadership meeting. I believe it's on November the 10th. Okay, that'll be a couple of Sundays from now. And also, don't forget to change your clocks on Saturday night going into Sunday, November 3rd, as they get turned back an hour. Okay, so that being said, we're going to go ahead now and start the discussion on the Torah portion. Okay, so here's some of the guidelines for that. So we are going to try to take this somewhat chronologically. After all, the events make more sense as we take them in order. So we would like to start in chapter 6. If you're on live stream, you can go ahead and make note of some things, and Manny will take those things down. Excuse me. So, Steve, go ahead and get us started.
Okay. This is referring to chapter 6, but I couldn't find the verse that sparked this thought. So we say we're walking with Elohim, yet in our actions yet if your actions in private were revealed, would you be convicted of what you say you are? Or would Abba find you worthy of being or put into an ark to save your behind?
There you go. Okay, well said. Okay, who's next? Okay, coming around to Shira.
Just to comment on verse 17, chapter 6, verse 17, it really stood out to me when he says, I myself am bringing floodwaters on the earth. And it made me recall other passages where Yahweh clearly says, I'm going to personally do this. And it just brought to mind just recently what you've been teaching us, that Yahweh doesn't cause every bad thing. And that's really, I've been pondering that, and I don't know if you care to comment further on that.
No, that's a great point. He wants you to know in this particular case that this isn't something he just allowed, that he's causing it. And so this is an important distinction. He says, I myself am bringing the waters. Okay, so this is a direct, response to his desires and his intervention to do these things. But it is good that we also understand that time and chance do happen to all men, and this is something that Solomon teaches us. And so we have to keep that in mind as well in a lot of the things that do happen in our lives. But there are those things that he does cause, and he doesn't usually let us know. He's in this case telling Noah exactly that he's the one doing this. But he doesn't always let us know up front. Sometimes we figure it out later. But, that's why we work with we have full faith and confidence. We have emunah that he either causes or allows all things. Okay? Okay, Rebbitzin?
Okay, in chapter 6, verse 5, it says that the thoughts of man, the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually, and that reminded me of Proverbs 6 and about those 6 things that Yahweh hates about, a heart that devises wicked schemes. So it's no wonder that Yahweh hates that. And then I think the verse that Steve Waffle was looking at was verse 9, that Noah walked with Elohim.
Amen. Okay, so you jump back to the previous Torah portion, which does give us the reason for what was going on, which is good, because sometimes we have to go back and make sure we haven't lost the context as to why there's a flood. And the flood is because of verse 5, when Yahweh saw the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was on. Now again, the thoughts of the heart is why you might want to go listen to the Heart of the Matter teaching, where we explain the idea of the thoughts of the heart. And out of the abundance of the heart, so much comes into existence and into our actions and our behaviors. And that it was on evil continually, and let's always remember that evil is defined by anything that we desire to do or would do that goes contrary to the way the Creator intended it. Okay, so they were completely focused on doing things contrary to how He intended it. Okay? Next, Sarah Beth.
Chapter 6:22. If I'm not mistaken, Noach is mentioned as one of the men that's highly favored by Abba. Here it says he was favored. But one of the reason for that I found, and do we emulate this, is Noach did according to all that Elohim commanded him. All.
Amen. Now the key part to this is that we even find there are parts where even Israel did according to all Yahweh said, but it was just for a moment. But Noach did it continually. I mean, this was his habit and his behavior as a lifestyle, as a pattern, as opposed to that rare moment when we read about how Israel actually did everything they were told to do. And we all go, wow, look at that. They actually did something for a change, exactly what Yahweh said. Okay? Which was related more to when they came out of Egypt and they were given instructions on building the tabernacle. There were times when he said, and everything that they did was exactly what Moses said to do according to Yahweh, etc. But yes, you have verse 9, where it says that he was righteous, perfect, and again, perfect there is tamim, which is the idea of being fully filled with integrity, etc. But he was perfect within his generations, and that is because he walked with. Okay? And we know that two cannot walk together unless they're in agreement. So we have that verse to go to. So there was an agreement. Noah walked in agreement with, congruent with Elohim. And this was different than everybody else who was walking in evil. They were walking contrary. We have verses in the blessings and curses where we're told that, and if you walk contrary to me, I will walk contrary to you, and you will be cursed 7 times. And if you still walk contrary, so this idea of walking congruently and contrary, or walking, walking with, in agreement with. Now, by the way, he doesn't agree with us. We have to agree with him. That's the agreement. The agreement that we're going to see eventually in Sinai. We're going to see the agreement of, if you agree to do everything I say, I would agree to take you as my people. That's always been the agreement, for us to come in line with him. And so of all the generations, it says in verse 8 that Noah found favor in the eyes of Yahweh. So why? Well, we are told in verse 9, because he was righteous and perfect in his generation, and he walked with Elohim. We're told this in chapter 7 and verse 1 also. He says, I've seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. Now, of course, the definition of righteousness is a problem for a lot of Christianity and a lot of people. It's defined by Torah observance or being in line with the teachings and instructions of Yahweh, yet they'll say, but they weren't given yet. Really? Then why was he putting clean animals and unclean animals in different numbers on, how did he know what clean and unclean were? Verse 2 says, of all the clean beasts, take you 7 pairs, and of the unclean, 2, a male and a female. So how did he know that? Because he'd been instructed. We're just not given the formal instruction until Moshe. Okay? So, remember, Moses is the one who wrote all this down for us. And so Moses chose not to share the rest of those details until Sinai, when it was codified and formally given. But he gives us these hints. Noach makes an altar. We have very specific instructions on how to make an altar in the Torah and how offerings are supposed to be done. We see this with Cain and Hevel as well. Because after all, Yahweh tells Cain, well, if you do it the right way, won't you be also pleasing in my sight? So apparently he didn't do something correctly, which he should have known how to do, as far as giving an offering. So there's lots of things that we can infer and see that were already understood. Of course, when we get to Abraham, we'll see that there's a verse coming, it comes up in towards Genesis 26 or whatever, where it says that he kept the statutes, the commandments, the Torah. All these things are mentioned there in the Hebrew, and yet that was way before Moses. Okay? So just keep that in mind as we read these things and we see how they play out. So we have a reason that Noah finds favor. Now, this is the same word that's normally translated as grace. Okay? And it's funny because there's a guy out there that had argued with me once upon a time saying that the word that I translated and chose to translate, which is chen, which is for favor or grace, he said, well, that means loveliness of disposition and comeliness and all that kind of stuff. So he was a sweetheart of a good-looking guy is why he found favor. And you see, that just doesn't make any sense. But that's not what the word means in the definition as it's used here. It may be one of the choices of the definition, but not for here. We're told that it was because he was righteous, because he was filled with integrity, that he walked in agreement with his Creator. This brought favor that was merited. It wasn't because he was charming. Actually, that's more the word I'm looking for. The idea of chen, he said, had to do with being charming in some way. There's some really bad characters we read about throughout history that were fairly charming. It didn't mean that they were worth anything, except that they were charming. Okay? Now, so let's just keep that in mind when we go to something like the Search for the Doctrine of Grace teaching, to understand that here's the first mention of it in the scripture. It says that Noach found favor. That's in verse 8. So it was the last verse of last week's Torah portion. He found favor in the eyes of Yahweh, and then we're told why. Verse 1 of chapter 7, because I've seen that you are righteous before me. As you walk before me, I see that you are walking according to what I've said. You're submissive, you're obedient, you are filled with emunah, you trust what I say. What more could the Father want? He says that merits my favor. He could have picked anybody. Actually, he could have picked nobody. He said, look, you've all messed up so bad, let me just wipe you all out and start again. But he said, wait a minute, there's one. And because of him, he said, go ahead and build an ark and we'll kind of work this out with you. Now, by the way, there's also a couple other things I want to bring out before we go past the mic, just because I've already got this kind of flowing here. Notice that it talks about, in verse 12, this is a key for, remember we talked about owning it? It says, they had corrupted their way. All right? Because their way was supposed to be coming in congruence with his way. But they had corrupted their way. The halakha had become corrupted. Okay, the halakha is the walk or the way. All right? And so that is been corrupted. Now, if we understand from John 14, Yeshua says, I am the way. So they've corrupted the way. They've corrupted their submission to Yeshua, who was there from the very beginning. We have other teachings to talk about that. Yeshua, the light of the world, etc. We know him to be the walking, talking Torah, which was brought into existence when light was, remember, day one, light is brought in. Not the things that emit light, the sun and the moon, that's not till day 4. But light. And Yeshua is that light, the order, the walking, living Torah that was brought into the world to bring order out of the tohu and bohu, the chaos and confusion that was there, the corruption. So he's what brings light into the darkness. But it says that he says, all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. They had taken his way and bent it, twisted, and corrupted it. This is something we need to be very aware of. Are we corrupting what he's given us? Or are we honoring it exactly as he gave it to us? Very important. All right? And then, of course, when we're looking at this, in verse 19, it then says verse 11, it says that the earth was corrupt, right? And the earth was filled with violence. So it's not just physical violence, by the way, because we have in Ezekiel 22, he says, their priests do violence to my instructions, or violence to my word. And so it's very important that we understand that. In Ezekiel 22, it says, verse 25, there's a conspiracy of her prophets in her midst like a roaring lion, tearing the prey. They've devoured life, they've taken wealth, precious matters, they have made widows in her midst. Her priests have done violence to my teaching. See, I think that was a big part of what was going on here. It wasn't just that they physically were violent people, and I'm sure they were, but they'd done violence to his instruction, violence to his teaching, violence to his order in the world. And so that's part of what happened here. And by the way, can't we see that's where the world is headed now and has been heading for a long time? When it says just like in the days of Noah. Well, what happened in the days of Noah? They were doing violence to his teaching, not just physical violence. And they say just like, like in Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, so yeah, there was sexual things happening and other corrupt things, but also again, they were doing twisted and perverting of what Yahweh had intended things to be. And so there's a consistent pattern here. All right, who's next? I've got a lot more to go, but we'll go ahead and skip to somebody else. Go ahead.
So you already mentioned a couple of these things, but I got like 8 questions here, and I'll just do a couple of them that
7 is completion, so you can't have 8. Okay, go ahead.
So in between 6, 9, and 7, the end of 7, you have where he walked with them, and it was Noah who was found righteous, but yet his family, who includes his other men who would be the covering of their own family, received part of that blessing being saved. Is that because they were somehow under Noah's covering to some?
Yes. Okay, so you have 2 things going on there. One is, yes, first of all, I'd rather the word delivered because saved starts sounding very Christianized, and we don't want to get that happening here just with Noah, okay? Because after all, the mainstream would not think that anybody was saved before Yeshua anyway. But they get delivered out of the flood because of Noah's covering, okay? Because the righteousness of one can then be of value to others. But also, Yahweh also knows that through Shem, there are certain things that are going to happen. Remember, he knows the end from the beginning. So he knows if I save Noah or deliver Noah from this, what Noah will do. If I deliver Shem, Ham, and Japheth, what they will do. Remember, everything with him is time outside of time, time irrelevant, meaning all things he could see the end and the beginning and know how they all play out. And so he includes them in this for that journey with their wives, okay? Because again, he knows what they will do. Both the good and the bad, because some of the not so great stuff comes out of some of his sons, and some of the good stuff comes out of one of his sons, okay? And the line continues through Shem. Okay, what else did you have? Okay, over to the live stream. All right, go ahead, Manny.
Norma Silva has a question on 6:7. Elohim commanded Yahweh to shut him in. Is there a father who commanded the destruction and Yeshua who followed the instructions?
Okay, where are you?
6:7.
6:7 doesn't say that. Okay, so now he does talk about shutting them in 7:16.
She probably wrote the wrong verse.
Okay, where it says, "And these are going in, male and female of all flesh, and when it is Elohim commanded, and Yahweh shut them in." That's okay. What was the question though related to that?
She wanted to know if there was a father who commanded the destruction and Yeshua who followed the instructions.
Well, you know, we are now dealing with some of the verses that says Elohim. Okay, so when you see Elohim with no designation, often that's talking about Father, Son together, or just the Father. Okay, so it's talking about the entirety of that, what that represents. When you see Yahweh or Yahweh Elohim, it's specifically generally talking about Yeshua pre-flesh. All right? So back in Genesis chapter 1, you see only Elohim, which I believe refers to both Father and Son. And then chapter 2, we get introduced to Yahweh Elohim, which I believe then represents the Son. Okay? So in a lot of these verses here, we're starting to see that it's Elohim. In other words, like Noah's walking with Elohim. In other words, in congruence with what Elohim teaches and represents. Not that physically Elohim literally was standing next to him and walking with him. All right? But one of them, and I would say that would obviously be the Son, who's interacting with man, especially with all the sin that was going on the earth. Yeshua is the one closing the door. Well understood. And it's interesting that you notice that Yahweh himself shuts them in. He puts his hand over them, he covers them up, and he keeps them safe. Okay?
All right, jumping to 9:3, a few questions there. One person wants to know, was all that meat on 9:3? And Olivia and Janet Hoffman wants to know on that same verse, when Yahweh added the creeping creatures as food for us to the initial given vegan diet, he was not saying we cannot be vegan anymore, correct?
Okay, so we get into 9. This is one of those verses that really gets, especially the Adventists all excited, or the vegetarian vegans all excited. Okay, look. He's saying every moving creature that lives is food for you. Again, we have syntax problems, language problems. It's very clear already that there's an understanding of what clean and unclean are. Okay, that has been mentioned prior to verse 3 of chapter 9. So just because it's not mentioned again doesn't mean that we have to then establish that there's a knowledge and understanding of clean and unclean. So he's trying to say, look, you had been vegetarian up to this point. He says, look, you can eat the meat. I mean, that may have been the problem that was up to here. Plus, you have to also remember that they're coming on an ark with a very limited amount of animals. So again, it's not saying that they weren't eating meat before, necessarily, because it just doesn't say either way. But they only came with a very limited number of animals. He's saying, look, you can eat them, but the clean ones. So that's not an issue there. And again, he uses the same language that we hear in Torah, which it says only do not eat the flesh with its life in it, the blood. Okay, this is consistent with what Moses is teaching as well, that you do not eat the flesh with its life, its blood. And we're told that in the Torah given at Sinai as well. So there's a consistency there. I mean, just remember that that's the same problem that we see like in Mark chapter 7, which is actually talking about bread, not meat anyway, that there's not an issue as to whether or not something is food, but whether or not that food could be eaten in a certain manner. Okay? Or if something's been done to the food, like whether that food was offered to idols. It had to be food first. Okay? And only certain animals are for you for food. Certain creatures were never meant to be food. Shellfish, pigs, these, are just never been designed as food. That's why we have Leviticus 11 to explain it to us. Okay, what else?
Somebody wanted to know on that, what's the significance, if any, of the 7 pairs of clean animals and 1 pair of unclean?
Okay, and I'm sorry, I realized I didn't answer other piece of the question. So no, this is not a negative attack on people being vegetarian. That was, I think, part of the question was, okay, no, you can be vegetarian or not. He's just telling you what you can eat. But you are free.
Vegan.
Or vegan. I mean, I'm just saying there's no condemnation or correction against eating only, vegan. It simply says that, hey, you can eat these animals. All right? The other question then was the 7 pairs versus the 1 pair. Okay, you got to remember that they needed some not only for food, which is why they needed more of them, but they also needed them for offerings. Okay, so they needed to have a much more abundant start with 7 pairs than you would have unclean. The unclean have a purpose, but you don't need so many of them because they're not going to be actually used or killed for other things. You're going to slaughter them for food. You're going to slaughter them for offerings. You're going to run out of them real quick if you only have 2 and have to wait for their offspring. Okay? So it's a very simple, logical answer there.
Simple, logical, yet you blew my mind. Never thought of that before.
There you go.
Evangeline, chapter 9:17. So the covenant was established between him and all flesh that is on the earth.
Right. See, remember, we have to be really careful. That's why we have 55 parts of the covenant teaching. Okay, and at the beginning of it, I think we explained this quite extensively, which is there are many covenants. Okay? And they're not necessarily exclusive of each other. There could be additional and build on each other. But in this case, this is a covenant that is separate from all other covenants, that this is a promise not to flood the earth again and destroy all flesh in that manner. And so he makes this covenant with everybody and everything that lives on this planet. And he says, I'll give you a sign with the rainbow so that you know that this is a covenant that still exists. So this is not like saying my covenant like the one at Sinai or my covenant of Ezekiel, Jeremiah 31, the renewing of the covenant. Jeremiah 31:31, which talks about, and I shall make my covenant. This is a covenant that he made and he never renewed it, never did. It's a one-time covenant that goes until there's a renewed heaven and earth. He says, this is for all flesh. And this is the sign of my covenant between me and all flesh. I am not going to destroy the planet again with a flood. Okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you. MTOI Lakeview, asking for somebody, can you expound on chapter 9:20 through 24?
No. Okay, next question.
I knew that was coming.
No. Okay, so this is a good piece right here. Okay, so to understand this section, you also have to understand Leviticus 18. All right? So in 9:20, Noah makes a vineyard, he gets drunk, and then goes and falls asleep in his tent. And so some of the children, some of his sons show up, and they see the nakedness of their father. And then so Shem and Japheth go and take a garment and lay it on their shoulders, and went in and they covered the nakedness of their father. So if you look at Leviticus 18:8, okay, Leviticus 18:8, it says, "The nakedness of your father's wife you do not uncover; it is your father's nakedness." I think culturally we probably haven't changed a whole lot in 6,000 years. Generally, throughout history, men didn't seem to have a whole lot of problem being naked in front of men. That's just never been an issue. More of an issue for the ladies, but never seemed to be an issue for the men. Even when you get to the societies like right around before Yeshua's day with the Maccabees, and you had the Greeks coming in and they would have the Olympic type games, and the men did these things naked. You know, they did the sports naked, they did. So it didn't ever seem to be a problem from that point of view. But if you look at Leviticus, you understand that the wife being uncovered is the father's nakedness. So now we go back and we see that what happened was Ham came in to the father, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. So he went in there and saw his father's wife, which they don't ever mention being their mother. And so she may not have been. It may have been his wife, and their mother may not have still been around. Remember, people lived a long time, and sometimes things happen to people. It just doesn't talk about it that way. It always refers to her as Noah's wife, not necessarily their mother. And so Ham goes in there, and he's like, comes out and says to the guys, "She's out there naked, and he's drunk." Now, of course, Shem and Japheth realize this is not appropriate. And so they walk in backwards to cover her up. And so this is appropriate, okay? And so when Noah wakes up, and he knew what the younger son had done, then he's not all that thrilled. And so I don't think this had to do with them seeing their father naked. I don't think that was the issue at all. I think it had to do with the laws of propriety of seeing the relative or family member, especially of the ladies, uncovered, exposes, or is the nakedness of the man. At least that's what Leviticus 18 seems to be saying, okay? So let's just keep that in mind. And it wasn't until we were going through those laws one year, many years ago, I was reading that, I was going, wait a minute. This now finally makes some sense out of what's going on in Genesis 9. When it talks about their father's nakedness, or the nakedness. It didn't say they saw their father naked. It said they saw the nakedness of his father. Okay? Now remember, in the garden, we were told they were naked. Okay? Here it doesn't say he was naked. It said he saw the nakedness of his father. So my guess is she was naked. And that this was the problem. Okay? So hopefully that answers the question for 20 to 24. But that was in my list of things to cover, so I was just joking when I said no.
Awesome. Oliver Hersey, and of course he wants you to know that he's asking on behalf of somebody else.
Okay, and I'm glad you got home safe, by the way. Welcome back to the future.
Genesis 9:25. Why was Ham cursed? What was his sin?
Well, because he was the one that started making a big deal about the father's nakedness. Okay? He says, and he said, "Cursed is Canaan, let him become a servant of the servants to his brothers." I mean, he's basically sending the curse down through the father. Ham was the one, remember, it says Ham in verse 22, the father of Canaan saw the nakedness of his father and told the two brothers outside. So when he found out what his son had done, Noah then curses him for that.
Genesis 10:25. Chantel wants to know, do we know what this means by "for in his days the earth was divided"?
I said, Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Yochtan. Nope. Not off the top of my head at this point. I don't think I've ever even pondered that verse. Good question, though.
All right, Nikolai, Genesis chapter 11, verse 6. What was the exact issue with the building of the tower?
It was a launching pad for the aliens that were out there to make a rocket. And you know, they were trying to do space travel to the original aliens that created all things. No, okay. Look, the problem is that man unchecked, unstructured, unregulated leads to all kinds of destruction, like happened with right before the flood. And they were headed right back there again. And now Yahweh had already promised not to do that all over again. So he had a new solution. I'm going to confuse their languages, so it's going to be hard for them to communicate. But a bunch of them will still speak similar languages, and they'll be able to communicate with each other in groups, and they'll split off and be less effective in coming together in one accord, so to speak, to do whatever foolishness they want to do. So hopefully that makes some sense. So he confuses their speech, which, by the way, that is part of what we see being somewhat rectified, or the miracle to kind of bring that back about in Mount Sinai and then in the upper room. You see both times where people are understanding clearly all in one language because they're hearing it in their own language. And so the Jewish or Hebraic urban legend, so to speak, is that everyone at Sinai that was there represented the 70 nations or the 70 languages, and the same thing at the upper room at Acts chapter 2. And so these are all things to show a coming back together, but in a right way, under structure, in submission to Yahweh, being able to understand things and speak a language that they would understand. So that's why the hearing miracle was in both cases, where they could all hear it in their own language. All right?
And going back real quick, I think the question was confused, or at least misspoken. The person wanted to know why Ham's the one that saw it, but Canaan is the one that's cursed. Why was Canaan cursed as opposed to Ham?
I think he was explaining at this point that this is going to be a generational thing. And also, remember, it says Ham, the father of Canaan. So I'm going to believe that Canaan was already, a full-grown adult at this point and somewhat actively involved in whatever his father was doing, etc. Because he's referred to in the previous verses, Ham, the father of Canaan. And then later we hear that Canaan is being cursed. So Canaan may have been involved on some level as well, for all we know, because this is how he's being referred to, as the father of Canaan. Okay? We're not given a whole lot more detail, so we're forced to guess.
Okay. Questions are coming in. Let's see.
It's funny how I've got so many things in my notes and you guys are jumping all around them and not hitting them, but that's okay.
This one? Yeah, I didn't see that one. Let's see. Dolores Stone, 11:4 and 9. Did the people think the scattering would happen to them, and this is what Yah did to them?
Okay, I'm not sure I understand the question. Did the people know?
Whatever, chapter 11, verse 4 and
Because in 4 it
9.
says, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is the heavens, and make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered over all the face of the earth." And then in verse 9, of course, he confuses their languages and then scatters them over the face of the earth. One of the themes that I want to bring out a little bit when I get to kind of hit some of my 2 or 3 points that weren't hit is that there are comparisons between when we do things his way and we try to force things our way. Okay? So they understood that it's going to take unity to do certain things, and that otherwise, without unity, they're scattering all over the place. Of course, they were doing unity, trying to do things on their own might, their own strength, with their own understanding, and in rebellion to his authority, which got them scattered. This is part of their thinking there's strength in our numbers and our unity, and that we can somehow overrule the authority of Elohim. All right? You see this also in chapter 6 and verse 18. You know, he says, and I shall establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark. Well, actually, verse 17, he says, I am going to bring a flood and destroy everything. And I'm going to start all over again with you. Now, compare this to the conversation with Moses, when he says, why don't I just wipe all these guys out and start with you? Okay, so what was the difference in the two situations? Because you notice Noah doesn't argue to defend anybody. Noah doesn't get involved in the conversation the way Moses did. So what's the different factor here? Not covenant. Okay, remember, the big difference had to do with Yahweh took those people out from Egypt. So he'd already done the ark thing to a certain degree. These are people that he already took out of the mess and the chaos and the confusion. And so now the world is watching, and Moses says, what's this going to do to your reputation? Noah doesn't have any of that going on here. He says, look, you made these people, you brought them into existence, and you want to wipe them out, that's your thing. Okay, because it's not one of those, it's not the same situation. But the language is interesting because he says to Noah, I'm going to wipe them all out and start again with you. He says essentially the same thing to Moses. But we want to see the differences in that. The difference is that Yahweh doesn't say things to Noach like, this people whom you brought out of wherever, I'm going to destroy them and wipe them out. He says to Moses, your people who you brought out of Egypt. And Moses is like, no, wait a minute. They're your people who you brought out of Egypt. And everybody saw you do it. See, now Noah could say that later after the ark arrives and people start coming now into existence through his family. And then if that were to happen again, then he could have said something to him and said, hold on a second, why would you wipe us all out? You just delivered us out of the flood. You brought us here, what, just to destroy us? See, he could have had that conversation then. Now remember, the Israelites were slaves. Now, how they got there, I'm sure, was a making of their own on some level. Okay, because they were in favor when they first got there. However, I mean, we could even look into the part where they were starving, they sold their lands, and they basically enslaved themselves for food and things like that. But these are people that chose to just be in full-out rebellion in the beginning, in Genesis 6. And so Noah doesn't have any discussion with Yahweh on this. It's clear Yahweh's already taught. It's just telling, this is what I'm doing, and you need to be ready for it, because there is a plan. You're going to go build an ark, and we're going to get you out of here, and that's the way the plan is. Because remember, he's already given them the instruction on building the ark, and now he's explaining to them why I'm going to do it. Well, I'm going to kill everybody, except you and your family, and I'm going to start and make my covenant with you. And Noah doesn't have any reason to have empathy or sympathy for these people, not because his heart's wrong. But he understands these are people that have brought exactly on them. They're reaping what they sowed. Moses knew these were just a bunch of dumb slaves that didn't know what they were doing. They were afraid. They were insecure. They were frail. They were human. They just had no idea how to be free. All right? These people had no excuse in Noah's day. They had interacted with and generationally been down through Adam. They understood what was going on, and they were just outright in full-out self-sovereign rebellion. So you got to compare the different things so we can understand what's going on and what the comparison is, okay? Look at 11:3. You know, in 11:3 it says, and they said to each other, come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. And they made a brick from stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, let us build it outside a city. You know, in Exodus chapter 1, they were given the job of making bricks and mortar with suffering. Did you ever make that link before? Neither did I. Today was the first time. Okay? But yeah, in Exodus chapter 1 and verse 14 it says, and they made their lives bitter with a hard bondage and mortar and brick and all kinds of work of the field. There are some really interesting comparisons going on between Noah's day and Moses' day. And Moses with that group of people, and Noah with the other group of people. So we have some really cool comparisons. So yeah, that hit me today when I was reading chapter 11 and verse 3 about the brick and mortar. I said, hold on a second. They chose excitedly to take bricks and build these things, and then generationally down the road, they were suffering and made to build things with bricks. Towers and edifices and pyramids and things like that. Interesting, really interesting. I'm sure there's a lot more we can glean out of that, but it's 10 o'clock. So what else you got real quick?
Robert Wyatt actually had an interesting thought regarding 11:3. He said, interesting thought. Earlier, Rabbi mentioned about how altars were to be built with stone.
Yep.
11:3, man makes brick for stone and builds their own altar, a tower.
I still like the launching pad and the rocket, but okay. I'm kidding. No, that's not an off point. Look, a lot of stuff Hebraically is, and yes, that could be true as well, and other things can be true as well. There's lots of stuff we could read into things. I just want us to start getting more and more in the habit of allowing our mind to say, where have I heard this before? Where have I heard something similar? Like, where have I heard Yahweh say, I'm going to wipe a bunch of people out? Oh, well, wait a minute. He said that to Moses. All right. He said it to Noah. So now we get to look at it and see what was different and what was the same. Oh, he says these people are dealing with brick and mortar and stone. Well, there's another group of people dealing with brick and mortar and stone. What's similar? What's different? See, there's so many lessons when we look at those things to compare and contrast and see what's similar and what's different. Amen? Amen. Any other questions? Because we're right at 10 o'clock.
Yes, a couple of people wanted to know on 11:7 if you could explain what the word us in the verses meaning.
Okay, again, when you see that kind of a thing in the verses, because remember, Yahweh has those that work for him, those that work as messengers, etc., that will go and do the work. And so he says, come, let us do these things. Okay? Often enough, he's not doing it himself, which is why when he says, I myself will do these things, that's a big deal. He has others that will do it for him. We see this in Revelation. There are those that will be doing different things in Revelation that he's not doing directly himself. We also see in Genesis that it's Yahweh himself calling down fire and brimstone from Yahweh in heaven. Okay? What else you got?
Somebody wanted to know your thoughts on the animals on the ark during that time. Were they actually still multiplying on the ark? I know. I just read them.
There is a very limited amount of information on the procreation habits of animals on an ark. Somebody may want to ask for a government grant, though, to study this out.
I had to ask it. Sorry.
So I had to give you the wise guy answer. It worked out good. Okay.
And somebody was asking the be fruitful and multiply command when they're building the tower. Is it possible they could have been breaking the first command given at that time, which was be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth, instead of gathering in one place to build a tower?
Okay, I know where it says it in one place. Where are you reading this now?
Oh, well, I'm reading it off my phone.
That's funny.
It's when they're building the Tower of Babel.
Yeah, but there it doesn't talk anything about being fruitful and multiply, so.
Well, that's from Genesis earlier.
Right, I know it's from earlier. No, I mean, look, the whole thing is not about being fruitful and multiply. The whole thing is that after they were fruitful and multiplied, now they had it in their mind to do whatever they wanted to do. Okay? Because it talks about, the idea that if we don't do this, he says, and now they are not going to be withheld from doing whatever they plan to do. And the key words there is, it's whatever they plan to do. And Yahweh already has a plan for them to do. But now they want to do whatever they plan to do. Okay? All right.
That's it.
You're welcome. All right, awesome. All right, who's going to close us in prayer? All right, Manny, go ahead. You got the mic. Go ahead and close us. Why not?
Abba, Father, we thank you for tonight's message and for tonight's word. I ask that you be with us as we go to our homes, and I ask that you allow your word to really resonate in our heart, to allow us to take home what we need as far as our personal lives, what you know that we need in our lives, that we may further be obedient to you and make you proud. Abba, Father, I ask that you be with us and really help us to gain your wisdom, your fear, Help us to hunger for your word and to constantly cling to you for everything that we go through, for all the trials and tribulations that you put us through. Let us rejoice and continue to be strong. Abba, Father, I thank you for tonight and for allowing us to be here and read your Torah. I thank you for our teacher, and I ask that you bless and strengthen him as he continues to speak your word. In Yeshua's mighty name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. All right. All those who want to be on camera to say good night to any of everyone, you can come on up here. I think we could fit all 8 of you up here. All right, I think we got everybody up here. Everybody's grabbing for their coins. Now, since Michael threw his out first, that means that when we go out later, everything's on him. Because we're all got ours. Okay. All right, Gabe's paying. All right. Actually, you're under 20, so you're exempt. All right, it's back on Michael. All right, everybody, here we go. When we're on 3, we're going to say, what are we going to say? Laila Tov. All right, Laila Tov's good night. Shavua Tov, have a good week, and tell them we love them, right? Ready? Here we go. Oh, yeah, we can say Rosh Chodesh Sameach, then Laila Tov, then Shavua Tov, and then tell them, oh, that's a long one today. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3.